Yeah, so Matt Coller right here, straight out of West Palm, rocking the sunburnt skin. There he is. If you're looking at the video, we have to cold open this. So yeah, first let's hear your West Palm Beach owners meeting tales because we're a couple of Northerners. I mean, you're there in Minnesota. I'm here in Buffalo. It's like we're just kind of dropped into this other climate. It's tough for us to adapt on many levels.
Very tough, very tough. So what happened to me was now largely I'm pretty good at staying indoors when I'm in Florida, but I was doing a podcast with our friend Ben Gessling from the Star Tribune, and we were doing it outside at a courtyard area with some tables. And now maybe I should have known that since nobody was around when it's really, really busy at the owners' meetings with 700 journalists there and everyone else, that if no one was in that courtyard, it was probably off limits. But I thought, what a perfect place to record a podcast. So Ben and I are out there for like 20 minutes. And then a security guard who could play right guard for the New York Jets comes walking out, his big giant dude, and says, "You guys, you can't be sitting here." And I said, "Well, we got like 10 minutes left. Like, can we just, like, I'm sorry, I didn't know that, but like 10 minutes and then we'll wrap up and then we'll clean up and go." And he's like, "No, my boss has said you got to go right now." And I was like, "Okay." I was reminded of Michael Scott. Like, this is the smallest amount of authority I've ever seen someone, go to someone's head. Like, that was the same sort of thing. But I'm like, okay, hey, if your boss is, and we know the billionaires are walking around, and okay. But we couldn't find another place in the shade because there was a huge kind of front lawn area, but all the chairs and everything were taken up. I walked by Sean McVay talking to Drew Rosenhaus, sitting there vibing and whatever. And we all saw Robert Kraft and Mike Vrabel, talking and stuff. So you're like, okay, kind of the important people are over there. Got the NFL Network set up over there. There's a lot of the TV people doing their stand ups. Like, where are we going to go? So there was this little nook of bushes, and I was able to set up my camera to look at both of us. Let's just make it work. But as we're finishing up the podcast, the sun creeps behind or out in front of a palm tree or behind from, the palm trees, and it is directly on my face. And for at least 15 minutes or more of podcasting, I am just pouring sweat. And I know that my face, which is already kind of naturally a little bit red, is getting destroyed by the Florida sun. I walk back inside and Kevin Seifert like, what happened to you? Because my face is beat red. I'm sweating everywhere. I was like, we were talking about safeties, like that sort of thing. So that was my tale from the owners' meetings, along with what I'm sure we'll get into all the Aaron Rodgers nonsense. What happened to you?
Oh, I thought we could go a full hour without the name coming up. Alas, we lasted 3.5, 4 minutes. Yeah, I'm picturing like Andy Reid with like a bucket of water when you walk back into the Breakers lobby and just dumps it on your head. All right, smacks you on the ass. Get back out there, Collar. Try again.
I mean, 80 something degrees after you've been in a Minnesota winter is just not acceptable
Yeah.
for my body. It was tough. Yeah. And I mean, when I'm hot, like I already sweat a lot, and that was just pouring like I had jumped in the pool. And honestly, my shirt looked like it had jumped
Oh,
in the pool.
I mean, there is not a deodorant in existence that works. I mean, I'm convinced it's all like deodorant's like a scam. Like none of them work. They just kind of make you feel a little better about yourself. I guess you just stink a little less because
Less
it's
smelly. Yeah. But does it
less
make you actually
smelly.
sweat less? No.
Yeah, they'll throw antiperspirant out there, but none of them work, especially for us who reside in wintry climates. But mine wasn't really weather related, and I do know the cause for this condition that I'm currently suffering from, which I think I'm going to write about at some point because there's a lot more to the story. But I've got shingles right now, Matt Collar. It's pretty rough.
How did that happen? How does someone get shingles? I know nothing about this.
Yes, it's yeah, 37 years old. I always thought like older people got shingles, but I guess I am kind of old at this point. I just started feeling it. It would have been Sunday traveling down. It kind of started in the left armpit. I'm trying to think of how many details I want to share. It is video. I guess I could share and just scare everybody off. But it's pretty ugly. It started there and it kind of worked its way to the back of my arm, to like my whole back, and then across the chest. A lot of welts. Looks like I've just got these grisly, disgusting sun blisters, basically. all over my body. But yeah, so at first you're kind of like, what in the hell's going on here? And it just burns. It's just like a knifing, stinging, burning sensation that starts right there in the pit and kind of goes from there. Unbelievably uncomfortable. After about the second or third day, then at that point you're flying back to Buffalo, and it just, you can't sleep, you can't get comfortable. Went to the doctor, got the necessary medications, throwing the calamine lotion on there. I think we're maybe turning a corner. Last night was pretty rough, but yeah, it's not fun. I don't wish this on anybody, man. I remember covering the Packers, and I think I could be wrong. I should have Googled this to make sure. I think Jeff Janis got shingles once, and he just described it as excruciating in so many ways. It does. In my case, and I think this is what the doctor said, this is the case for a lot of people. It's rooted in like stress and anxiety. And there was something that went down Saturday night. Like I said, I'm going to write about it at Go Along, I think, in a few weeks. But I did have a very, very, very stressful situation in my life Saturday night. And I know that absolutely is what triggered the shingles. And it is crazy to think like how you feel about something happening in life, like mentally, and getting nervous about something can just lead to massive physical changes. So I kind of threw something out there on Blue Sky about shingles, and people responded, and on Substack Notes as well. And they just said, like, man, I hope your shingles doesn't last as long as mine. Like some people say it can last 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, I'm going to tell you the truth. I knew absolutely nothing about shingles at all, and I didn't know that it was triggered that way. But I also do know how it feels to be traveling to go do something and cover something, and you're like, all right, I got my plan and I know what I'm doing. And
Oh,
you're
it had
feeling
nothing
good.
to do with
And
work,
then
too, by the way. Nothing to do with work.
but then all of a sudden you get hit with something. So this
Oh,
happened to
yeah.
me in 2019 when I was covering the Vikings playoff game. So we were down in New Orleans and they beat the Saints, but the flu had been running through the Vikings locker room. So that week between the Saints and the 49ers games, I got the flu. Now, this is when nobody attacked me. This is when we all used to just go to work sick before certain pandemics happened. We all learned about masks and how we share our stuff. So I was just like, well, look, I'm a grinder. I'm not going to like take a day off here. This is a playoffs. We got to go, we got to go do this. So I was out in San Francisco and I get on the plane, and as soon as it goes up, my ears just explode. Like anybody who has this happen with sinuses and stuff, but if you got the flu and you're completely congested, as soon as we got up to like 10,000 feet, the pressure was just unbearable. And it is not a short flight. And as you probably, I don't know, maybe you haven't covered game out there, but San Francisco needs finger quotes. It ain't in San Francisco. That stadium is in Santa Clara, which is nowhere near San Francisco. So I flew into Sacramento because I was working for a very, I won't insult them, but a company that wanted me to be shrewd with the dollar. So I flew out to Sacramento, and then me and another reporter drove down to Santa Clara, which was probably 45 minutes. It was the most painful flight of my entire existence. And you get there, you're just like, I am practically dying, but I also still have to do this, right? And so I know that when you're doing the
Yeah.
travel stuff and you're dealing with something physical, it is really stressful and really tough.
And it's like I feel bad even like relaying the travel pain back to my wife. I mean, she's 7 months pregnant with our third child and chasing around our two other kids. It's like I don't want her to think that I've got anything going on. And she's amazing. Like Gina's Googling this stuff and she's like, I think you have shingles. And then I stopped at a Walgreens on my way down to the Dolphins HQ. That was the other. I was kind of driving between West Palm and Fort Lauderdale, like each of the 3 days. So it was a lot of driving on I-95, which isn't ideal. I mean, last year we chronicled here, I was stranded on the I-95 from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m., which was a whole lot of fun. But yeah, you feel bad even like letting anybody else, because at the end of the day, we're right about sports. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers and JJ McCarthy, and it's a pretty sweet gig. But yeah, it's not as glamorous as people might think.
Oh, that's definitely for sure. That is definitely for sure. I mean, that goes for just about everything. I mean, even when you look at something like the owners' meetings, which is a lot of fun. And the other night when they had the party, I walked in and Guy Fieri was taking pictures with
Yeah,
people. I saw like Eli Manning walking around. I'm like, what is Eli Manning doing here? Last year, I was talking to the Vikings general manager, and right behind him was Vince Carter. Like this party just draws a lot of celebrity people to it, and you're like, how did they let us into this? Like
exactly what I was thinking.
right,
Why are we here? I
the
mean, I'm not
dirt
going to ask
bags.
questions,
Yeah,
but
exactly. You got the billionaires and the celebrities, and we're like, we get to look at them. So it is kind of fun like that. But also, we were put in a tent that was not very well. Didn't have the greatest AC. Didn't no look. I'm not insulting, but the food was not really for me. For some of it, and it was just like, yeah, keep the rats outside, away from the rich people that are important. They're inside, and sometimes
but you could go in there. I mean, I
no,
kind
you
of
could. It was
worked in the
beautiful in
lobby.
there. It was
You
beautiful.
could definitely post up and
Yeah,
act like
if
you've
you
been there
found a good
before.
spot, yeah. I hadn't been there before either. It was, I mean, the place is unbelievable. I mean, it's on this little island, and you drive by the yachts that all the owners and everybody has down there. I mean, it's incredible. I'm only joking, but it is kind of, when you say it's not as glamorous, it's like, yeah, we're in kind of a tent. And then we're at all those, I'm sure people saw the videos of the coaches at those breakfast kind of things, and we're jammed in this little
Oh
tiny
yeah.
building back to back. I ended up in a bunch of photos of Jim Harbaugh because I wanted to ask Harbaugh about JJ McCarthy. So I sat down next to him because they didn't travel a lot of their beat, the Chargers, but there was so many people around, I couldn't get up. So I ended up sitting just next to Jim Harbaugh for 45 minutes while he did his entire, he's
That's
talking about
great.
backup tight ends that they signed and all sorts of stuff. And I'm just like, okay, I can't move, so I guess I'm staying here for Jim Harbaugh. Which, what a interesting experience that was. But it is, we have all these little funny moments along the way when we're doing this stuff.
And I think this time of year, you've got 32 teams, 32 head coaches who can all feel pretty damn good about themselves. You can sell hope right now to your constituents. But I wanted to bring the great Matthew Coller, by the way, onto the Go Along pod of Purple Insider. We've had him on many times before. A Substack vet and host of his excellent Vikings podcast, which you should listen to. Also, he supplies the guitar riff to this show. We're gonna have you do a new riff. I'm just gonna make you do a new one for free, if that's okay.
I would love
Because
to.
they're all
I would love to.
fantastic.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I wanted to have you on though because I feel like even though it's hunky dory and rainbows and puppies and sunshine and everybody loves everybody, kumbaya across the entire NFL, I was really looking forward to seeing what Kevin O'Connell was gonna say about JJ McCarthy because clearly he's swiping away on the social apps looking for Aaron Rodgers. Maybe a little interested. Maybe we go on a date. Maybe we just kind of see where this thing goes. But I kind of like you. But do you like me? And I think we're in agreement that the Vikings have a really good thing going culturally. I mean, you moved on from Mike Zimmer and KOC 3 years into this thing. Everybody just loves it there. Those NFLPA grades, like A's across the board, the roster's loaded. This was the plan, right? JJ McCarthy, young quarterback. You're not going to rationalize good in the absence of great. You're going to go for it. It never made sense to me that they would even really consider an ornery 41-year-old, malignant quarterback who could ruin a really good thing. But clearly there was some interest there. So what was it like, speaking to O'Connell and the beat writer session I'm sure you guys had, and then the breakfast table setting, and how did he he has to put it to bed to an extent with maybe a creak of a door open. Like, let's start there. Where was it left with Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah. So the fascinating thing about the Aaron Rodgers discussion is just kind of how it swelled and what it became. And then what it ultimately is essentially nothing. If JJ McCarthy were walking down the stairs today and he tore his other meniscus, then they would have almost no other choice with this roster but to call Aaron Rodgers and try to make it work. Because I don't think Ryan Tannehill is saving the franchise. Just even with all the things that go along with, I think we'd all agree Aaron probably has more in the tank left than Joe Flacco or some of the other quarterbacks that would be available today. So you have to leave the door open for that possibility that something happens with JJ McCarthy. But where we stand right now is that they made it clear to us at the owners' meetings, both the owner Mark Wilf and Kevin O'Connell, that that's not something they're doing. This was the plan all along. They're sticking to it. And the party line with them was, well, Aaron Rodgers is so accomplished. We competed against him for so long, and Kevin O'Connell knows him. So we have to have that conversation because he is so accomplished and he's so great and he's an all-time, and no one debates how great Aaron Rodgers' NFL career has been. And because he has a relationship with O'Connell, they had discussions, and Rodgers wants to be a Minnesota Viking because Justin Jefferson, et cetera, right? So that's kind of the way that they are presenting what went down. Now, how true that is depends on who you ask, because there are certain reporters who have put it out there that this is exactly what happened, that Aaron Rodgers was never likely at all, but they had to have the discussion. And because O'Connell knows Rodgers, they were going to have that talk. And they were going to sit down as a franchise and decide whether they wanted to go forward with something like that or not. That is what football franchises do. They talk about their options of what football players to get. So, okay, fair enough. But then on the other side of this, there has been reporters at The Athletic, Diana Rossini, Mike Silver, who have talked about this in a much different framing. And it wasn't too long ago that Diana Rossini was asked by Dan Patrick, where do you think Rodgers ends up? And she said, Minnesota. And at one point, Mike Silver said that they were 50-50 on the fence of whether to go get Rodgers or not. And my reporting, my talking to people, trying to be Sherlock Holmes of the Aaron Rodgers thing is, well, number one, I would say the only people who truly know how close they got to signing Aaron Rodgers are Kevin O'Connell, Mark Wilf, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. The decision makers, the leadership, they are the only ones, and Aaron Rodgers probably, are the only ones that truly know what percentage it was. Were they working out a deal and then it didn't go through, or who nixed it, or like they are the only ones that know exactly what went down. But the more people that I've talked to say that the truth is in the middle. They were realistically considering, would it be a good idea to bring in Aaron Rodgers with this veteran roster that they spent so much money on? And JJ McCarthy has not played a single football game. JJ McCarthy will go 600 plus days between playing football games by the time he starts in week 1. And in the middle is a very, very serious knee injury, which truthfully has ended players' careers before, because a meniscus is much different than an ACL. An ACL, it's like get the needle and thread back together. Meniscus, my understanding is, and I had a surgeon on the show explain this to me, that the blood flow to the meniscus is much different and it can cause problems. He had some swelling. They had to do another procedure. And in the process, he lost a lot of weight, which people saw on TV. And I think that, people can blow that off however they want. It's not supposed to happen. And I think there's probably some people in the building who are looking at the roster going, gosh, this is a team that can really, truly compete for the Super Bowl. Look how stacked we are. Are we really going to turn it over 100% to a kid who had an injury last year? He's 22 years old, has never played in the NFL before, and has taken all of about 4 first-team reps in training camp last year because it was Sam Darnold's show the entire time last year. Still, when we look at Brock Purdy and the way he came in, CJ Stroud, Jaden Daniels, there have been many quarterbacks. I counted 11 since 2021. Is it 21 or 20? Who have made the playoffs in their first or second year. We're seeing it all the time in the NFL, where young quarterbacks come in and they very realistically compete for Super Bowls. I think it was Jalen Hurts' third year as a starter where he made the Super Bowl in 2022 because he was drafted in 2020. I mean, again, it's just all the time. If you put the right roster and the right coaching, they have a top 5 caliber defense. They have top 3 weapons in the league if everybody's healthy. And now a beefed up offensive line, a beefed up running game, coach of the year. Like, if JJ McCarthy can't win with this, then I don't know. Like, even if he's inexperienced, even if there are bumps. So I was strongly against it. This was their plan all the time. Why bring the circus to town with someone who hasn't been good at football since 2021? But in the building, you understand this as well as I do. When a team wins but doesn't get to the Super Bowl, the pressure is just turned up on everybody. Egos start to be a thing. I want to get my attention. I want to get mine. I want to get my money. I think, things like that start to happen. And I think they were, a little nervous of, we just set the bar really, really high. Now, how do we get back there when we can't really say that there's a sample size? So they have to lean on, well, we saw him in camp and he looked pretty good. We saw him behind the scenes and he was working real hard. I mean, that's not a lot to go on. Now, I buy it. I buy it. We've just seen too many great quarterbacks that have awesome supporting casts. Jared Goff 2018 goes to a Super Bowl with an amazing coach and an amazing supporting cast. It's happened too many times recently for me to ignore it. And the NFC does not have Josh Allen. It does not have Lamar Jackson. It does not have Patrick Mahomes. You can do it in the NFC right now. So I say 100% go for it and believe in the kid. But there's a lot of people who, until they see him get out there in camp and look really good and take command of the franchise like they drafted him 10th overall to do, that I think they will be keeping in the back of their mind. Should we have done it? Should we have gone with Rodgers? And I still think they made the right call.
One hell of a rundown right there. I got to think that Kevin O'Connell's, he probably is the best teacher of the position in football, and so it can go both ways. I mean, if you're Kevin O'Connell and you know what you're capable of getting out of that position, and you know Aaron Rodgers, and you know what would be around him, yeah, it would be tantalizing to an extent to think, okay, like he did squeeze out a couple MVPs in 2020, 2021. We drop him into this situation. We can go for it for 1 year. I get it to a degree, but all the other stuff should supersede it. I mean, they put a lot of work into that quarterback draft class. I would really love to know, like, how did they rank those quarterbacks? Caleb Williams, Jane Daniels, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy, Drake May. Like, how are those guys stacking up in their room? Because obviously they took the quarterback. I guess it took him ahead of Nix, right?
Yep. I have a good sense for that, by the way.
Yeah. Do you want to just hit on that quick? How do you think they ranked these guys?
I think that they really were comfortable. They knew they weren't going to get Drake May would have been the dream for Kevin O'Connell.
Right.
He might have, I don't know. Was anybody not taking Caleb Williams? We could pretend now like they weren't, but Caleb Williams was locked in number one for like 3 years. But I think Drake May was the perfect fit for Kevin O'Connell. He's kind of like Matthew Stafford, like a young Matthew Stafford. And that's what Kevin O'Connell won the Super Bowl with in LA. But I heard that they loved Michael Penix's personality, his arm talent. You think about him throwing down the field to Justin Jefferson. My goodness. That would be really something. But with JJ McCarthy, it was really about what is our development timeline. And that's what makes this so tricky, because nobody expected them, including them, to win 14 games last year. So now it's all accelerated. And when you spend that much money around him, it's like it would have been a little better fit timeline wise for Michael Penix, because he's a grown man coming out of college. You saw how quickly he assimilated himself into the NFL. That you'd have more confidence in. The difference in passes thrown in college was 2,000 to 700 between Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy. So they knew that if they drafted McCarthy, they were going to have to take it slow. And I don't believe McCarthy would have played at all last year. Now, of course, Darnold was great. If Darnold had struggled mid-season, they might have gone to JJ McCarthy, but they really wanted to not push him. And I think that's part of the Rodgers discussion, is that Kevin O'Connell is on record as saying, when he writes his memoir, the title will be "Teams Fail Quarterbacks More Than Quarterbacks Fail Teams." That's his quote. That's what everybody is latched onto, and rightfully so. We see that constantly. I did a look at this with the analytics of taking the PFF supporting casts and comparing them to success and failure, and it's close to a 1-to-1 correlation. The teams that couldn't put any offensive linemen or receivers or coaching around their guys failed. The ones who have been supported really well mostly succeeded. It's not 100%, but it's darn close. And so they can do that here for sure. But there is always going to be that, like, we have to develop him. We want to be careful. We want to take it as slow as possible. You'd rather go too slow, kind of like driving, I guess, right? You'd rather go, a little too slow than way too fast and end up in a car wreck. And I think that's how they see it, is that they would rather go too slow with McCarthy. And that probably caused them to, I think they probably did make an offer to Sam Darnold and see if he wanted to come back for 1 year and, have this discussion with Rodgers. But I think it was even between Penix and McCarthy. I do not think Bo Nix was quite in the same. They would have taken him if they had to because they needed a quarterback, but I don't think he was in the same conversation. But I wanted to ask you a question, though, on this, which is your opinion about the way that this thing was reported? Because I know anything regarding Rodgers that you've got your eye on, especially with something that could be this dramatic. And what's hard for us is we know these people. Like when the fans are attacking Diana Rossini or Mike Silver and they're going out and, screw you for reporting this and this kind of thing. And we're like, well, I know Mike and it's like, I don't think that they're making stuff up, it's just, but at the same time, then you have the, NFL Network. Clearly the team is telling the NFL Network, can you put this out there to tell everybody that we're moving to McCarthy? And it just became very muddled in the public eye. And I think that was a real challenge for fans.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question because it brought me back to 2023, I guess it would have been, right? February of 2023, off of his last season in Green Bay, where they missed the playoffs. They lost to the Lions at Lambeau Field, and then it's decision time. And it was Bob McGinn, right at Go Long, who he dropped the bomb on me, let alone the world. Gave me no heads up that this was coming. Just said, hey, T, let's just do a podcast, kind of, wrapping things up with the Packers. And usually it's me kind of reaching out to him after the season to do the extras. So my antenna should have been up. I should have known something was coming. Then he just, drops it. Yeah, Green Bay is finished with Aaron Rodgers. They will move on to Jordan Love. They view Love as like Rodgers 2.0. They're kind of fed up with Rodgers to a degree. I forget what the exact language was, but it was definitive. Like they're moving forward. And we were just, blasted. A lot of the same, trying to choose my words kindly. There's a contingent of pro Rodgers Packer fans that kind of reemerged from the shanties that maybe, told me to kill myself back when I wrote that Bleacher Report story. They were, because I don't like blocking people on Twitter. I'm a lover. I'm not a blocker. Maybe I should block.
Oh, I block a lot of people. Yeah,
I mute from time to time.
Oh, okay, same deal.
Yeah. But a lot of them kind of came out of the wilderness, and they're just giving it to me, giving it to McGinn. So that's one element of it. That's the fan element. But the reporting element of it was fascinating because Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, right? Those are the two heavyweights that just report everything. And I'm sure they're getting it from both sides, the Rodgers camp and the Packers camp. And the Rodgers camp is basically God, this feels like forever ago. They're going to keep the flame lit for all possibilities. And the Packers, they don't want to shut anything down because they want to get the best trade value that they can for Aaron Rodgers. And there's a human element of it. I really think it was the Seinfeld episode. It's not you, it's me. I mean, they're trying to break up in an amicable fashion with Aaron Rodgers, not unlike Ted Thompson with Brett Favre. The similarities in the two situations are surreal. So they're not just going to come out and say, we're done with this guy either. So everything that the reporters are going to hear is, there's still a possibility and they want him back and he wants to be back and maybe this thing could work out. Where Bob has his sources on the inside. Does he cover the team every day at 1265 Lombardi Avenue? No. Do phones exist? Yes. And people talk. And he got the truth straight from the horse's mouth in so many words. And it held true. They moved on. They traded him to the Jets. So I guess it's in a roundabout way of saying, like, today with the Viking situation with Aaron Rodgers, Mike Silver, Diana Rossini, they've been doing it forever. They're fantastic reporters. I'm sure it's coming from a place of substance. They're not inventing this stuff. I can definitely see the Rodgers camp, though, somehow putting out to anybody pro Rodgers scenarios. I mean, yeah, I'm sure he'd love to follow Favre's footsteps and stick it to the Packers as a member of the Minnesota Vikings when you've got Justin Jefferson instead of Sidney Rice, right? Like this team is loaded. I'm sure there had to have been some of that involved, but I'm sure that those reporters are also getting a sense from the Vikings themselves and people in that building. And you kind of hit on it too, Matt. Like there was some type of flirtation where even if it's mild, it means something, right? Because you said this yourself, Matt. Like they could have had a press conference. Boom, JJ McCarthy era's here. Buckle up, everybody. He's our guy. And they didn't do that. They didn't put it to bed. So inaction often speaks more than anything that you could possibly say on the record or behind the scenes.
Right. I mean, this was clearly very real. And people were sort of accusing, Diana Rossini and Mike Silver of making it up to get attention, which they don't
No.
need to do because they have long enough careers, as you mentioned, big enough followings that they can go cover whatever story they want. Also, they are dealing in information from certain people that they are passing along. And if certain people inside the building are presenting it one way, but they're presenting it to other reporters a different way behind the scenes, and we all just sit here and wait with no word from the team, what are any of us supposed to do with this? And that's where I kind of always come to well, I guess the truth must be in the middle. If this is how it's being said to some people and this is how it's being said to other people. And I think the team was unhappy that Diana and Mike were making it sound like it was close when they didn't want it to be said that it was close because JJ McCarthy exists, I guess, or maybe even that sort of presentation is unfair in general. As I said, like the only people who know how close it really was the head coach and the GM. And here's me kind of sitting there going, well, they haven't introduced their free agents. They haven't done a press conference, and they normally would. So this to me means they're having serious conversations about it behind the scenes. And we wait. And once the white puff of smoke came out, which was them telling NFL Network, like, we're not doing it, then it was like, okay, I guess we're going forward with the plan that was always there. And it's waking up from a bad dream and right back to normal. We introduce the free agents. We talk about JJ McCarthy, and we're all back to normal, at least for now. And we all try to hope and pray that JJ McCarthy doesn't hurt his knee again or something, because I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want to cover that. That seems like a disaster to have to cover Aaron Rodgers every day, because you're not covering a football player, you're covering a political figure. And whether you agree or disagree with Aaron Rodgers' political statements, we can all agree he's a controversial political figure. And that is a different monster in today's world than it is to have Brett Favre. It's a former Packer. But Brett Favre was not out there telling people that he was going to be the vice president or something like that, as Aaron Rodgers was. So that it just brings so much more. And when you talk about, well, the culture is very strong, we could quell some of all that. No, that's a monster that you cannot contain. It's not just the Jets. He was like this with the Packers. And you can't tell me that Matt LaFleur isn't a good coach, isn't a good offensive coach, by the way, or that they didn't have a great team. They went to the playoffs the next year and destroyed the Dallas Cowboys with basically the same team that he won 9 games with. And that was my biggest thing is, all right, well, if you're bringing in someone with political opinions, I guess you can do with that what you may. But from a winning football game standpoint, someone's going to have to show me with their hands exactly when the last time Aaron Rodgers won football games, because it wasn't last year. It wasn't when he tore his Achilles, which seems pretty relevant. And it wasn't the last time he was with a great coach in Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. So I think ultimately, for guys like you and I who cover the league, this whole how it went down with whose sources were saying what, and there's kind of headbutting between, well, we think this is the case. No, you're carrying that person's water. No, you're carrying that person's water. And I'm sitting kind of eating my popcorn like, well, guess we'll just all wait and see who's carrying who's what, I guess we'll go from there. What I know is that it was serious. This was not something where Kevin O'Connell just picked up the phone when Aaron Rodgers called. Oh, hey, Aaron, how you doing, man? Oh, you good? Oh, yeah, I know you'd love to play for us. Great to talk to you. See ya. No. This was an organizational sit down. We're having this real discussion. And I don't blame them for that. I do not blame them for having that conversation. And I also think they 100% came to the right decision to go with JJ McCarthy.
There was one point, Tuesday morning was the NFC coach's breakfast, and I saw Sam Newton of Vikings PR. He was hustling, like, weaving between the tables, and I go, Sam, hey, how's it going? I go, you didn't hear the news? You didn't see it? You guys signed Rodgers. And I don't think he bought it. Maybe like a millisecond he thought, you son of a. But yeah, I was thinking of Vikings PR through this all. The best in the business. They're all phenomenal at their jobs. But that would have been a handful for that crew.
Well, and that became a thing too, because with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah doing a press conference, Kwesi was as open as you'll hear from any GM ever about what they did with Rodgers. And that's why I don't think that we're at any point of this being mysterious anymore. It's like Kwesi told us what it was. They had that discussion, and you can't entirely close the door because you don't know what's going to happen in the next coming weeks. What did Kyle Shanahan say? Who knows if I'll even be alive next week or whatever. Like, football people do have to kind of think that way. Plans and contingency plans. I thought he laid it out extremely well. However, he did get his ass grilled in that press conference about Aaron Rodgers, as is going to happen when it's someone. And I said this to somebody with the team at one point, because I think they were wanting to focus on the amazing free agency that they had, which is totally fair because they signed more players and spent more money than anybody else. And all we're talking about is a guy who doesn't play here. But my point was, you're not bringing a football player to town. You're not having a conversation about a football player. You're having a conversation about a celebrity at that point, somebody who's Elvis Presley, right? I mean, this is a player who moves the needle like almost no one else in football. If you want to be the A1 subject every single day with every single comment on Get Up every morning, those little press conferences where we throw 5 or 6 questions at the GM, I mean, it ain't even close to what you're going to see if you actually brought Rodgers here, which is why I think that they made the right call. I mean, can Rodgers still throw the football? Oh my gosh, yes. He can absolutely still throw the football. And do I think he'd make the playoffs with the Vikings? 100%. I think he would make the playoffs with the Vikings. But there's another scenario there where the circus is so different from anything that Kevin O'Connell has had before. I mean, Kirk Cousins, non-controversial quarterback. Sam Darnold couldn't be any less controversial. Sam Darnold, one of the quietest leaders I've ever been around. I thought he did a tremendous job of leading the team last year, but he was not going to ever be the guy who's got the quote that they're debating on TV or whatever else. So it was the most undramatic, under talked about, because it was not controversial at all, 14-win season that you've ever seen. And that worked really well for everybody. It worked great for the coach. It worked great for the players. The leaders could just lead. I mean, Aaron Jones, for example, if you got that guy in a locker room, everyone is better because Aaron Jones is here. And his voice can be the loudest voice in there. And that's what you want, right? And you want the focus to be on your entire team. You want your star players to be written about and talked about when they're succeeding. Justin Jefferson, you're not anything but Aaron Rodgers if Aaron Rodgers is there. Tell me what the second biggest Jets story was last year. I have no clue. It's because it's Aaron Rodgers or who Aaron Rodgers got fired. Those are the biggest stories, right? Did DJ Reed play well? Who cares, right? I mean, that's what it becomes when he's there. So I think they got a little preview of that. And maybe even after that and seeing some of the fan reaction as well. I have to give the fans credit. They were against this in mass. Nobody wanted it in the fan base. And maybe that was influential to the ownership. I don't know. If I own the team, it would be to me. I'd be like, okay, my entire fan base does not want this at all. I mean, that has to be a factor. So that's just a whole other element of they've built this brilliant culture. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in this sport. It is true belief from these players. It's not made up. It's not like, oh, KOC, whatever. No, it's truly real. Mm-hmm. And you basically, if you're KOC, you give all your power over to Aaron Rodgers if he shows up. And if you think otherwise, then you've got another thing coming. That's what we've seen.
Agree 100%. And this is a team, like you said, won 14 games, traveled out there in the middle of the season. We did a podcast at that point. This is a team that can get to the Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl. And how did it end? It ended like these seasons typically do end with subpar quarterback play. Sam Darnold does turn into that pumpkin. It's not all on him, obviously, as these free agent moves would attest. They got a lot stronger inside on both lines. They need something special in their quarterback, an it factor. So if we're trying to pinpoint what can make JJ McCarthy different, he didn't throw the ball a ton at Michigan, as I'm sure Jim Harbaugh has tried to defend his guy, and he'd say we could have thrown it 30, 40 times if we needed him to. But I caught up with one Vikings starter on the eve of free agency as this decision kind of loomed. And this player, he was trying to be careful with what he said. He didn't really want to throw Sam Darnold under the bus because he loved Sam. A lot of guys love Sam. My God, they hoisted him on their shoulders after that Packers win, which it's crazy to think that he's not their quarterback. Watching that scene,
I know,
right? Many Men, they're singing Many Men, 50 Cent, and they're spraying him with water. Everybody's going nuts. Everything fell apart after that, and this is what, let's just call him a starter on the Vikings, told me, quote, "There's an it factor that's real as far as winning it all, not just the quarterback, but that's the largest piece, in my opinion. I'd like to think that JJ has the it factor, obviously coming from what he did in college. I think he'd probably tell you this. He's probably crazy enough to believe he can do it too, in terms of winning it all." So to you, Matt Coller, what is that elusive, nebulous it factor as it pertains to JJ McCarthy?
I think that it's his personality, but I also don't want to downplay his actual skill set because I feel like his personality and work ethic are so impressive that you can almost focus too much on that. And I remember saying to someone, and I guess because it got aggregated that I said this, I have to really clarify what I meant. I said, I came home for practice one day and said to my wife, I was like, yeah, they said we were getting Matt Hasselbeck. We might have got John Elway. And what I mean by that is that he has a skill set of a first round quarterback, an arm talent, playmaking. He's bigger than he looked at Michigan. Like he put on, I mean, we'll see how he comes back from the injury, but he had put on pretty serious weight. And I think he weighed in at over 210, maybe even close to 220 at the NFL Combine. And you could see him growing kind of before your eyes of, oh, he's coming into his physical own. And when he would throw the ball and Sam Darnold would throw the ball, and Darnold has one of the best arms I've ever seen in my entire life. I was like, oh, that's not that different. Like Darnold is, of course, more polished and he's been around for a long time, but it's in terms of velocity and how hard the kid can throw the ball. Like the arm talent is there. The playmaking mentality is there. The winning mentality is there. And I think what he will do is anything that it takes to set himself up for the best possible position. And what really stood out to me was two things. When we first talked to him the first day, his first press conference, we asked him about, oh man, could you ever have sort of dreamed of seeing yourself as a first round draft pick? And he's like, yeah, in fifth grade, I decided to edit my life with the sole focus and goal of being an NFL quarterback. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what I was doing in fifth grade too. I think I was sorting my football cards or something. Like, what are we talking about here? That's crazy. But that's how long he's had this goal, and he truly has. And he uses every resource at his disposal, whether it's, I did a story on him in meditation and interviewed a sports psychologist about that. And he uses different sleep methods and all these things that you would hear LeBron is doing to try to maximize his possibility and up his chances. And where I was really blown away by JJ McCarthy was two different times. One, he didn't look very good in OTAs and minicamp. Now, nobody was panicking. It's like, well, he's a rookie quarterback and, he's struggling to learn a very complicated offense. And then he came back in training camp, having not gone on any vacation at all. He did not leave. And, all the players go to Cabo or whatever. They take that time off, spend it with family. He stayed in Minnesota. He went and worked out at the facility every day, set himself up with a training plan to get that offense down, to get that footwork down. I mean, they change everything when you go to the NFL. How he stood in the shotgun was different from when he was in college. So all the footwork is different. And when he came back to those training camp practices, by about 2 weeks in, it was a totally different guy. He looked in command of the offense. He was so much more accurate. He was confidently making plays. Now, not perfect, of course. If he was perfect, he would have been QB1, but he was just showing so much progress so fast. And the other time was he had a horrible practice one day. I mean, it was awful. Like rookie, just a rookie, interceptions, incompletions, nothing went right. And he came back the next day and was awesome. And it was like, that's what it takes. Like all this stuff, that's what it takes. The players clearly galvanized around him. He's got an it factor. He connects with people incredibly well. He connects with media people well. He connects with teammates well. His first day in rookie mini camp, you could see that. Like, I'm the dude. I'm the guy. There's a moxie about it. I think that's what your anonymous source is talking about. There is something about his personality that has magnetism to it that people go to. And this is the stuff where when you're trying to be a draft analyst, and you have opinions on some draft analysts are a lot better at it than others, and have a lot more humility than others. And the best ones recognize what they can't know. And what you can't know as a draft analyst when you're trying to just watch McCarthy all 22 tape is what is in there in terms of the head, the heart, and that magnetism that every top quarterback has. Just say Joe Burrow, and guys are like, Joe Burrow, whoa. And you're like, what? And you're like, I don't know. That. I think there's that with McCarthy. And that doesn't mean he's going to be in the Hall of Fame or he's going to be Joe Burrow. It just means that's what I've seen so far. That's what you're working with.
And I'm just shaking my head because I'm thinking of the opposite of everything that you just detailed. The opposite would be an Anthony Richardson. And Bob laid it out in a column last year. I didn't know any of this. I don't know if many people locally did too, where Richardson, he received a ticket for driving 105 in a 60-mile-per-hour zone at 411 outside of Gainesville. This would have been in April of 2022. Okay, everybody makes mistakes. So he pleads no contest, ordered to complete a traffic safety course, write an essay, pay a $349 fine. What did he learn from it? 2 months later, 2 months, he is apparently drunk at the Manning Passing Academy at Nicholls State University. Police angry when Richardson leaned against the squad car. Manning staffers whisked him away into a van, and Richardson apparently was screaming obscenities at the officers while they left the scene. So it's just, to me, it's not necessarily like what somebody like Anthony Richardson does, but you didn't learn. Like, you screw up badly, 40 plus for the speed limit. What did you learn 2 months later? You do this. I don't see a JJ McCarthy screw it up back-to-back ways off the field, on the field. He seems like somebody that's going to only move one positive direction.
That doesn't sound like editing your life to be with one goal of being a superstar quarterback. I also thought it was telling, and I'm not saying Ryan Kelly said to us, I left Indianapolis because of Anthony Richardson. He did not say that. Okay, so I'm not putting words in his mouth. But I got the sense when he more or less said, yeah, I felt like I was kind of finished there and ready to move on to somewhere else. It just felt like they don't really know what to do with that. They spent such high draft capital on him. He's so ludicrously talented, but you just don't know how someone is going to handle a spotlight. I thought Anthony Richardson in college showed a lot of guts. He almost beat Georgia with a pretty bad Florida team, and that they were dropping passes on him left and right, and he just kept making plays and stuff. But you don't know what it's like when the guy has enough money to buy a Lamborghini, or if he even, some people just don't even understand like what it takes. I saw there was a comment from Tet McMillan about how he doesn't watch tape. And a lot of people on the internet were like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. A lot of guys just go to work and go home. I don't know, man. You're going to have to show me those players because I am around some of the smartest and most successful NFL players in the world every day. Justin Jefferson goes home and him and his brother watch practice tape and break it down. I mean, Justin Jefferson is as much of a film rat as you are ever going to find in your life. He goes to practice, he goes to the meetings, he goes home, he watches the film himself, him and his brother will break it down, and then he watches Monday Night Football. I mean, that's, I don't know, man. If you tell me that the guy is like not a big fan of watching film, I'm a little concerned. So, I don't know. Sometimes it's that way with guys. That's why you just don't really know. With McCarthy, you know that if it doesn't work, it is not going to be because he didn't put in the effort. It's not going to be because he didn't have the work ethic or the character or whatever. It will be because playing in the NFL is stupid hard. But they have set this guy up because, you'll hear this. Well, the bust rate on first round quarterbacks is X. And you're like, well, are they all given the same track? Because some guys are given alligators and moats and, they have to jump over spikes and electroshocks. And some guys just walk to the finish line. I mean, I think Brock Purdy's a really good quarterback, but I mean, so far in his career, he hasn't had too many obstacles in front of him. Where Sam Darnold, what the hell was he supposed to do in New York or Carolina? So with JJ McCarthy, it's like, what's the bust percentage on JJ McCarthy? Well, how many guys have ever been given a better situation, better coaching, and have come in with better character than he has? I mean, really, it's just going to be if he can't throw the ball accurately. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to, is whether he's going to succeed. And it's not succeed or not. It's just, I think, levels of success. Can you really win a Super Bowl or not? But you mentioned it, like the self-belief that he has, the focus that he has, it really stands out.
And that shit between the ears, man, it matters. It matters. Oh, yeah. Like, it's not like we're just a couple of old guys getting sunburn, shingles, and losing our hair. Like, that stuff matters. And I had to pull up Ted McMillan on Bob's series to see what the scout said. And to your point, this is what one scout said on McMillan. By the way, he's the number one rated receiver for Bob and everybody. I mean, he'll be the first receiver drafted, but you got to deal with some of that other stuff. Quote, "It's just, which guy are you going to get? He's a really immature kid. He's a poster child for this NIL shit. They kiss his ass to get him to stay, and then they do what they want." Like, maybe he's so talented and physically overwhelming, and maybe he can flip that switch. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, this time of year, it drives me nuts. And you turn on ESPN, NFL Network, a lot of really good people doing a lot of really good draft stuff there. Do not get me wrong. But by and large, the draft industrial complex, everybody's great. Everybody's going to Canton.
I was going to say, there's 50 first-round picks, right?
And, I get it. Like, there's some scathing stuff from these scouts. Really scathing. But these players are going to get people fired. So if you want a reflection of how these scouts got to be tough. They got to be tough. You've got to grade with a sharp edge, or else you're going to get people fired. I mean, jobs are on the line with all of these picks. So, man, knowing how somebody's wired, like a JJ McCarthy, that probably does matter more than anything else. Really, how's he going to handle this all? They've got a team that can win the Super Bowl. Can he handle that mentally?
And I will say about McMillan specifically, what you don't know is whether the realization will hit him or not. Because there are plenty of guys who come out of college and like, I'm the man, I'm the go. Like, I can do whatever I want. I'll just come in here. And they go to 2 practices and they're like, uh-oh.
And then they do something about it.
Right.
That's a great point.
The guy across from me is the Pro Bowler. The guy across from me is 27 and has 2 kids and will rip my freaking head off to get his next contract. Like I'm a physical freak. That guy's a physical freak. I'm a first-round pick. Yeah. That guy's a first-round pick, right? So once that hits some guys and they immediately grow up and realize, okay, there's no way I can just sort of go through life the same way I did in college. There's plenty of guys who have grown up after that, and there's plenty who haven't. And that's the difference between, when people talk confidently in the draft, I laugh hysterically. If you think you know who's going to come out and who's going to be the next Hall of Famer or whatever, I heard what about Marvin Harrison Jr., who I think is a great receiver, by the way, but like, oh, this guy's so good, they're going to build a statue of him someday. And you're like, I don't even know if the guy is going to play in his first, like, let's see, because you don't know. And health's another thing, but like, you just don't know what kind of transition someone's going to make from college to the NFL. And it's that way. Think about even like in a life aspect. It's that way with high school and college. Yeah. You might be great in high school and go to college and you just don't fit there. Some of us were terrible in high school and then felt much more comfortable in college, right? And you just don't know how that's going to work out. I've seen players whose college stats and athletic traits and everything are just so mediocre, and then they become $60 million NFL players. I mean, Cam Bynum, for example, one of my favorite stories of all time. Cam Bynum was a cornerback at Cal, They move him to safety. By the end of his first OTAs, Mike Zimmer called him brilliant, and Mike Zimmer does not hand out compliments. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And his first game was in 2021. Harrison Smith last minute gets COVID, can't play. Cam Bynum has not practiced at all at this position. He's not even the backup for that position, but he's kind of the next man on the depth chart. So sorry, buddy, you got to play today. You found out this moment. He picks off Lamar Jackson, plays a great game. And why? Because he was mentally prepared. And he had been working behind the scenes like a madman to be ready to know everybody's position, how the entire defense worked, all the moving parts. And he was in the right place. And a few years later, he's somebody that nobody thought of. Tell me what draft analyst had Cam Bynum as a $60 million player when his first contract came up. I'm going to say nobody. They don't know the heart. They don't know the work ethic, and they don't know how people are going to transition from college to the NFL. And I think that is something that makes uncertainty high. It makes the draft so fascinating. And this thing that we can never really capture, which I love, but I also feel like it's nails on the chalkboard when somebody says, well, this guy is absolutely going to be the next whatever.
I love hurling ourselves into the mental side of it all more than the X's and O's and breaking down route concepts and all, because it is so fascinating. You've got to take chances on some of these prospects. If you're interested in winning championships, you've got to roll the dice. I thought that Zach Taylor put it perfect. You know, the Bengals historically have taken some chances. His predecessor, Marvin Lewis, took a few more than he probably should have. But the way Taylor put it, he said there's countless players that are household names that we know and love that their first year, they wouldn't want a book written on them about how they were late to a meeting or missed a walkthrough. I got plenty of those stories someday with their approval to put into the story somewhere.
And that's like when somebody isn't good in their first year and everyone declares them a bust. We're sort of dealing with that with Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner was very close with Kyrie Jackson, who was killed in a car accident. Only a few weeks after he was drafted, or maybe a month or two after he was drafted, and they were friends. I mean, imagine how traumatic that is. Like, you get drafted, you have high expectations, the Vikings trade up for you, and you get on the same team as one of your guys that he played with at Alabama, and then that guy dies before you even get to training camp. I mean, this is a disconnect between people of our age who have been through many different things in life, and you sort of, for us, it's like you got to go back to work the next day or whatever. But imagine yourself, you or I, 20 years ago, and dealing with that same sort of emotional trauma. And then people are like, why didn't you just like sack the quarterback every play? Not to mention that he's behind Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel, who are incredible players. But why don't we give some time for somebody to develop? And last year, Brian Flores said he met with Dallas Turner and said, like, what's your weight room, strategy or schedule? Like, how are you keeping the weight on throughout? There's so many things that these guys just don't even know. How to keep weight on is a art form in the NFL because these guys work so much and play throughout the season that they lose weight. And if you're already somebody who at the combine had a few extra artichokes to try to get, that weight up, then you're going to lose a lot of that through an NFL season, which I think happened to Dallas Turner too. So they have to learn, and it has to take time. And that's why, we really do need like that 2 or 3 years, and we're all trying to grade drafts. Oh, well, they gave the Vikings draft a C.
The grades are in. They're
Congratulations. I mean, I don't know. It means nothing.
What about the redraft? The redraft.
Oh, yeah. We got a redraft.
Yeah, we got to redraft.
After you know all the answers, here's what you would do. Great.
I don't know. I'm not going to rest until that we're mocking practice squad tryouts on Tuesday in the middle of August.
Yeah.
That's what we need, Matt.
Yeah. I really do enjoy the discussion about the draft because I think anyone in the actual NFL knows the uncertainty factor, and picking apart what factors do you weigh? Like, to me, when I hear Tet McMillan say that, I have two thoughts. One is, you better learn to watch film. Number two is, I'm sorry, why are you saying that? Like, why would you let it come out of your mouth that you don't like watching film? I've heard of offensive tackles that don't because they don't want to overthink it. That's maybe the only sport or the only position I've ever heard that can't just like put in all the work that it takes and just does it at the facility and goes home and doesn't do anything on their own. But there's a little common sense there. Like, are you drafting a guy that is going to so severely lack in common sense that he publicly says he doesn't watch football or watch film and lets that get out there into the world. Like there's a little bit of do you have, because I think it takes common sense to be a good NFL player a lot of the
Yeah.
times. And maybe you're right. He's so good at catching a football, it might not matter. But I love picking apart what we think of, the little clues that we pick up, the analytical clues that we pick up. Well, how many pressures did this guy have in college versus sacks versus what does the combine say? I love that mystery. I think what I've tried to do in the last couple of years is not let the, as you call it, the industrial complex and the absurdity of that whole megalomaniac universe bother me, because I love it. I love thinking about it. And I love thinking about it from the GM's chair of like, what risk would I take? What position is going to be valuable to me or hard to replace? Like I've been trying to convince the Vikings to draft a wide receiver because it's so hard to replace them and they
Yeah.
cost so much money that you need to always have the next guy who's kind of on the way to take Jordan Addison's spot if you need to and stuff. So that puzzle is never endingly fascinating to me.
It is. I'm not hating on that. I love all of the above. I just get worn out by the mocks. I'm all mocked out. It's like the 7 round mock. Don't
You
tell
want to do
me
a
you do a
mock right now?
seven.
We could do a 7 rounder right now.
You don't do a 7 round
I
mock
got
at
all
Purple
day.
Insider, do you? If you did, we're deleting the whole podcast.
What I'll tell you what I do that's a great tool is I use the draft simulator. So I couldn't tell you who the Detroit Lions are going to. Well, I should be able to know Detroit. The Jaguars are going to take in the fifth, right? But the simulator will give it a shot, and so I like to run the simulator just the Vikings picks, and then try to figure out if who was on the board at this point, what might they take, what might they need. And there have been a few instances where I have nailed it. Brian O'Neill a few years ago,
Oh,
and Jordan Addison was another one that I nailed in the simulator. I actually think that the simulators do a pretty good job of putting you in that GM's chair without having to do a whole like mock thing. And then
I don't
we could
know.
talk about scenarios. I think from a local perspective of covering one team, you're trying by the time you got a draft time, which that could be this week, and I'd be fine with it, by the way. NFL,
Got to build it
Roger,
up. We got all the pro days, not this pro days season to fill those time slots.
Roger, do it this week, right after the owners' meetings. But anyway, I like trying to get inside the head of the decision makers and talk about all those different ways that they could approach it. That's fun. Like, haven't you noticed that the NFL has become so much fans loving to play GM? And I'm so guilty of this. I built teams on Madden as a kid endlessly, and I love that. So I've really tried to lean into that. Like let's all put ourselves not just in the Monday morning quarterback after games, but really try to put ourselves in the GM seat and make these decisions along with them.
And you realize that it's not like all 32 GMs are really that much smarter than everybody else. A lot of them screw up in some pretty big ways and pay the price for it. Yeah, when you put it that way, I mean, one of the greatest things that Matt does at Purple Insider is like those mock negotiations. I think you nailed it last year with Kirk Cousins. That's exactly how it ended up going down behind the scenes. They had their price and they stuck to it, and we'll take you back a here, but we know you're probably going to get more elsewhere. And here we are. The JJ McCarthy era is upon us. Everybody, do yourselves a favor and make sure you read everything that Matt writes over at Purple Insider. Listen to his podcast, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. This was great. Thanks so much for hanging out, Matt. Let's take care of our skin. You know, in my case, I'm reptilian, so hopefully it will clear up soon.
Man, I feel bad for you. That sounds tough. Try to reduce the stress. You know what? Meditation. That's what JJ McCarthy does.
Yes.
It's underneath anybody who's a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan. When Richard Lewis and Larry, do you watch that show?
Oh,
When okay, so do you
fantastic
remember?
show.
Maybe this is a really deep cut. This was from like season 3, but when they were sharing the word that they were using to meditate or whatever, their mantra, they were sharing. Okay, anybody who's a super big fan would know. I just watched a bunch of it on the plane back, and I was dying laughing on the plane watching old Curb episodes where they share a mantra. So you and I could share a mantra. Draft season will someday end. Draft season will someday end, and your shingles will just disappear.
There it is. That maybe that's the third prong to this. It's the medication, the lotion, and then draft season will end meditation.
Next season will someday end.
On that note, thank you so much, brother. Great to see you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.